Moonlight poured down upon the sacred clearing, pale and unforgiving, as if the sky itself had gathered to witness judgment. The mating ceremony had already begun. Ancient stones formed a wide circle beneath the open sky, their surfaces etched with symbols older than memory. Torches burned at measured distances, their flames steady despite the night wind, fed by magic rather than oil. The air hummed, thick with power, expectation, and the restless energy of wolves waiting to be chosen. Drums sounded low and deep, each beat echoing through bone and blood. All around the circle, the pack stood gathered in tight clusters. Families pressed close, shoulders brushing, murmurs flowing between them like shared secrets. Young women stood near the center, their backs straight, their faces carefully composed, each one hoping the moon would see her and decide she was worthy. She stood at the edge, not because she was late, because there was nowhere else for her to stand. The space around her remained empty, as if an invisible boundary had been drawn, one no one dared cross. She felt it in the way bodies subtly shifted away, in the way eyes slid past her as though she were part of the stone, not flesh and breath. Unchosen, unclaimed, unimportant. She folded her arms around herself, fingers gripping the worn fabric of her dress. It was plain, too thin for the night air, and borrowed. Everything she owned had always been borrowed. Space, patience, tolerance. This ceremony was not meant for her. She had known that long before the torches were lit. Long before the drums began. Girls like her did not dream of mates or moon blessings. Girls like her attended ceremonies because tradition demanded it, not because fate had plans for them. A ripple of laughter drifted from nearby. She did not need to look to know who it came from. "Why is she even here?" a young woman whispered, not bothering to lower her voice. "She should be grateful they let her stand inside the circle at all," another replied. The words slid into her skin like cold needles. She kept her gaze fixed on the ground, counting the cracks between the stones. 1, 2, 3. Anything to keep herself steady. Anything to stop her heart from remembering hope. The alpha of her pack stepped forward, his presence commanding instant silence. Power rolled off him in waves, heavy and sharp. He spoke of tradition, of lineage, of strength, of worthy unions. His eyes never once touched her. When names were called, they were not hers. One by one, bonds sparked beneath the moon. Subtle glows of magic, gasps of recognition, hands reaching, wolves stirring beneath human skin. Applause followed each pairing. Pride. Approval. She felt smaller with every breath. The air grew thicker. Utter. Magic pressed down on her chest, squeezing, demanding something she did not have to give. Her ears rang. The drumbeats grew louder, then uneven, as if her heart had begun to lose the rhythm. She inhaled, and it wasn't enough. Her vision blurred. The torches stretched into streaks of gold. The moon fractured overhead, splitting into pale shards. A sharp ache bloomed behind her eyes, then spread, hollow and deep. "Dissuade," someone scoffed nearby. "Don't be dramatic." Her knees buckled. The world tilted violently, the stone rushing up to meet her. But it never did. Arms caught her mid-fall. Strong arms, steady, unyielding. A gasp rippled through the circle. She felt warmth first. Not heat, but something solid and grounding, like standing against an ancient tree in the middle of a storm. Her cheek pressed against a broad chest, and for a single disorienting moment, she smelled him. Pine, smoke, and something darker beneath it, something powerful. Hands closed around her carefully. Not possessive, not rough, as if she were something fragile. Her fading vision caught the blur of unfamiliar dark fabric, the sharp line of a jaw she did not recognize. Whispers erupted around them. Who is that? Did he touch her? Does he know who she is? Her heart tried to race, but her body would not listen. The magic pressing down on her finally became too much. Darkness crept in from the edges of her sight, slow and merciless. She tried to speak, to apologize, pull away. Instead she slipped. The last thing she felt was being lifted. Not dragged, not dropped, but carried, as though the night itself had decided she mattered after all. Then the world went silent. And she did not hear the voice that commanded everyone to kneel. Darkness did not arrive all at once. It came in slow, rolling waves, like deep water pulling her under without asking permission. Somewhere far away, sound still existed. The distant thud of drums, the sharp intake of breath from the crowd, but it no longer made sense. It belonged to another world, not hers. What remained was sensation. Arms held her close, unmoving, certain. She was dimly aware that she should panic. She had been touched, lifted, taken from the stone circle in front of everyone. That alone should have sent fear racing through her veins. But fear never came. Instead, there was warmth at her back and beneath her knees. A firm chest supporting her weight, steady as the earth itself. Whoever held her did not rush, did not tighten his grip when she sagged further into him. His hold adjusted with quiet precision, as though he understood exactly how fragile she was in that moment. Her head lolled slightly, resting against him. The scent returned, pine and smoke, threaded with something older, darker. Power. It wrapped around her senses, not suffocating but anchoring, as if it were the only thing keeping her from dissolving completely. Murmurs rose around them, sharper now. Who dares? That's not one of ours. Put her down. The voices were edged with outrage, disbelief, ownership. She felt him shift, turning slightly, angling his body so that she was shielded from the circle, from watching eyes, from judgment. A hand came up to cradle the back of her head. The gesture was small, careful, undid her. Her fingers twitched weakly, brushing against unfamiliar fabric, dark, finely woven, warm from his skin. The contact seemed to register with him. His breathing changed, just slightly, a controlled pause before it resumed. Then he spoke. One word. Low. Absolute. The sound of it cut through the night like a blade through silk. Silence fell. Not hesitant silence. Not confused silence. Obedient silence. Even in her half-lost state, she felt it. The sudden, crushing stillness of dozens of wolves bowing their heads. The drums stopped mid-beat. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. She did not know what he had said, but she felt what it did. Her body was lifted more securely, drawn closer to his chest as he took a step forward. Then another. She sensed movement, smooth and unhurried, as if no one dared stand in his way. Someone protested weakly from behind them. A voice she recognized, sharp, defensive. She is nothing. She doesn't. The stranger did not turn. He did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He simply continued walking. The night air brushed against her face as they passed beyond the ring of torches. The sense of the crowd faded, replaced by cool earth and distant forest. Each step he took was measured, grounding, as though he carried her not out of urgency, but certainty. She drifted, slipping further from awareness. Yet pieces of the moment clung to her. The way his thumb pressed lightly against her temple, steadying her head when it lulled again. The way his arm tightened when her breath stuttered, not in panic, but instinctive protection. She had never been carried before. Not like this. Not as something worth holding. Her mind tried to ask questions. Who was he? Why her? What would happen when she woke? None of them found shape. Her lashes fluttered, the last threads of consciousness unraveling. Through the haze she sensed warmth ahead, light not born of fire but magic. Stone beneath his boots gave way to something smoother, enclosed, filter. She heard distant footsteps fall in behind them, but no one came close. No one spoke. It was as if an invisible boundary moved with him, marking where others were not allowed to tread. Just before the darkness fully claimed her, she felt him slow, felt him bend slightly, adjusting her weight as though preparing to lay her down. No, someone whispered urgently. My king. His answer was too quiet for her to hear. But whatever he said ended the argument. She was lowered at last, not onto stone or straw, but onto something impossibly soft. Cool fabric brushed her skin. Pillows cradled her head. His hands lingered for a fraction of a second longer than necessary, ensuring she was settled, safe. Reluctance passed through his touch. Then it was gone. The warmth receded, leaving behind the faint echo of his presence, like a heartbeat remembered after waking from a dream. Her body sank into the softness. Her breathing evened. The weight inside her chest eased, just enough for sleep to claim her fully. She did not see the way he stood there for a long moment, unmoving. She did not hear the guards ordered to the door. She did not know whose chambers she had been carried into. All she knew was this. For the first time in her life, she fell into darkness without fear. And somewhere beyond her dreams, the Alpha King did not leave. She woke slowly, as if the world were reluctant to let her return to it. First there was only warmth. Softness beneath her body. A faint, steady hush that felt nothing like the cold stone of the ceremonial circle or the hard cots of the pack quarters she knew so well. Her fingers twitched. The fabric beneath her hand was smooth. Too smooth. It slid between her fingers like water, cool and impossibly fine. Silk, her mind supplied faintly, though she had never touched it before. Her eyes opened. Light filtered through sheer curtains that drifted gently with the night breeze, pale and silvered by moonlight. The ceiling above her arched high, carved from dark wood in elegant curves. Shadows clung to the corners of the room, deep and watchful, while soft lantern glow painted the walls in gold. This was not the healer's den. Her breath caught sharply. She pushed herself upright, heart pounding as panic surged through her limbs. The bedding shifted around her. Thick covers, layered and heavy, scented faintly with pine and smoke. That scent again. The stranger. Her pulse stuttered. Where am I? She swung her legs over the edge of the bed, only to freeze. The floor beneath her bare feet was warm. Magic. Subtle. Constant. Her gaze darted around the room, taking in details too refined, too deliberate to belong to any place she had ever been allowed to enter. A carved table stood near the window, its surface polished to a soft sheen. A low hearth rested cold along the far wall, its stone etched with protective runes. Even the air felt different, cleaner, quieter, as if the room itself expected calm. The door opened. She flinched, scrambling back against the bed, breath sharp and shallow. A woman entered, head bowed, her dark hair braided tightly at the nape of her neck. She wore fine garments marked with the crest of the ruling pack. Two more figures followed behind her, each moving with quiet purpose. "My lady," the first woman said softly. The words struck harder than any shout. "I." Her voice came out hoarse and used. "You have the wrong person." The woman paused, lifting her gaze just enough for their eyes to meet. There was no mockery there, no disdain, only certainty. "No, my lady," she said again, then gestured to the others. "You are awake. That is good." They moved toward her, and she recoiled instinctively. "Please," she whispered, panic clawing up her throat. "I didn't do anything. I don't belong." "You are not in trouble," the woman said quickly, stepping back to give her space. "You are safe." If the word felt foreign, dangerous. One of the servants set a small tray on the table. Water, steaming herbs, clean cloth. Another drew the curtains wider, letting moonlight spill fully into the room. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her effort to steady it. The women exchanged a glance. "You are in the private chambers of the Alpha King." The world tilted. Her ears rang, a sharp, hollow sound that drowned out everything else. "Alpha King." The words repeated, echoing in her skull until they lost meaning. "No," she breathed. That's not possible." The servant knelt before her without hesitation, lowering her gaze. "You were brought here by his command." Her stomach twisted violently. Memory surged back in fragments. The ceremony, the pressure, the fall. Strong arms. Silence falling like a blade. The stranger. Her hands curled into the bedding. "Why?" No one answered. The women busied themselves quietly, pouring water, adjusting pillows, straightening the room as if it were their shield against her question. Their movements were practiced, respectful, and unmistakably careful. "They said my lady," she whispered more to herself than anyone else. "You shouldn't call me that." The first woman hesitated, then said, "We will address you as His Majesty instructed." Her heart skipped. "Instructed what?" she asked. Before the woman could respond, the air in the room changed. It was subtle, a shift in pressure like the moment before a storm breaks. The servants stilled instantly, heads bowing in unison. The door opened again. He entered without announcement. She felt him before she saw him, the same grounding weight, the same quiet power that had held her together when everything else had fallen apart. He moved with unhurried confidence, his presence filling the room without demanding it. Alpha King. Dark hair brushed his shoulders, bound loosely at his nape. His clothes were simple but impeccably made, shadowed fabrics that seemed to drink in the light. His eyes found her immediately, sharp, steady, unreadable. He did not touch her. He did not approach the bed. He simply looked at her, as though measuring not her worth, but her state. "You are awake," he said. His voice was calm, controlled, the same voice that had silenced a crowd without effort. She swallowed hard. "Why am I here?" Pause stretched between them. "You collapsed," he said. "I intervened." "That doesn't explain this," she whispered, gesturing weakly at the room. "I shouldn't be here." His gaze did not soften, but it did not harden either. "You are under my protection," he said simply. The words settled heavily in the air. Protection. From what? From whom? From herself. He turned then, issuing a quiet order to the servants. They withdrew at once, leaving the room in reverent silence. The door closed softly behind them. She was alone with him. Her pulse raced. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he replied. She searched his face for mockery, for cruelty, for the cold dismissal she had learned to expect from those with power. There was none, only restraint. He moved at last, crossing the room to stand near the window, keeping distance between them. Moonlight traced the sharp lines of his profile. "Rest," he said. "You will not be questioned tonight." "And tomorrow?" she asked quietly. His eyes met hers again. "Tomorrow," he said, "we will speak." Then he turned and left as silently as he had come. She remained frozen long after the door closed, her heart pounding, her mind reeling. She lay back against the silk pillows, staring up at the shadowed ceiling, the scent of him still lingering in the air. Why her? The question echoed unanswered as the room settled around her, soft, guarded, and unmistakably dangerous. And somewhere beyond the door, the Alpha King ensured no one came near her again. Sleep did not come easily after he left. She lay awake, staring into the dim canopy of shadows above the bed, listening to the unfamiliar quiet. The palace did not creak or sigh the way the pack quarters did. There were no raised voices, no distant arguments, no careless laughter cutting through thin walls. This silence was deliberate, guarded, pressed in on her. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt it again. Strong arms, steady breath, the way the world had gone still at a single word spoken in a voice that carried command without effort. Protection, he had said. The word lingered, heavy and unreal. Eventually exhaustion claimed her, pulling her under just as dawn brushed pale light against the curtains. She woke to movement, not near the bed, not threatening, but present. Her eyes opened slowly, her body tense before her mind fully caught up. The room was brighter now, washed in soft morning light. The hearth had been lit sometime during the night, its embers glowing faintly. And he was there, seated at the table near the window, unmoving. The Alpha King did not look at her when she stirred. He stood only when she pushed herself upright, the bed's silk sheets whispering softly at the sound. "You're awake," he said. She nodded once, clutching the edge of the bedding as if it were an anchor. "How long have you been here?" she asked. "Long enough." The answer told her nothing and somehow everything. He remained where he was, keeping distance between them. His posture relaxed but alert, like a predator at rest. The morning light caught in his eyes, revealing a depth she did not expect. Not warmth, but not coldness either. She took a steadying breath. "I shouldn't be here." "No," he agreed. The word struck harder than she expected. Her chest tightened. Of course he would see it too. "But you are," he continued, unbothered by the way her shoulders stiffened. "And that will not change today." She stared at him, confused. "You just said—" "I did not say you were wrong," he said calmly. "I said you are here." There was no apology in his voice. No regret. No attempt to soften the truth. It unsettled her more than cruelty ever had. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "People are going to talk. They already are." The certainty in his tone made her flinch. "They'll blame me," she whispered. "They always do." His eyes sharpened just slightly. "They will not," he said. "Not they should not. Not I will try to stop them. They will not." A quiet knock sounded at the door. Before she could react, he turned his head. "Enter." The door opened and 2 guards stepped inside. They did not look at her. Their attention remained fixed on him. "No one removes her from this wing," he said, his voice even. "No visitors without my permission." "Yes, Your Majesty," they replied in unison. The door closed again. Her breath felt shallow. "You're imprisoning me." He considered that for a moment. "No," he said. "I am keeping you alive." The words sent a chill down her spine. "From what?" she asked. "From the consequences of last night." She frowned. "I didn't do anything." His gaze held hers steadily. "You collapsed during a sacred rite. You were carried from the circle by a stranger. In front of every alpha and elder present." Realization dawned slowly, dread blooming in her chest. "They'll think I planned it. They will think many things. And you don't care." He crossed the room then, stopping several paces away. Close enough that she could feel him again, the quiet pressure of his presence, the restrained power beneath his stillness. "I care about what is true," he said. "Not what is convenient." She searched his face, trying to understand him. "Why did you help me?" The question hung between them, fragile and sharp. His jaw tightened, not in anger but in restraint. "Because you needed it." "That's not an answer. It is the only one you will receive for now." Her hands curled into the bedding. Frustration stirred, tangled with fear and something else she didn't want to name. "You don't even know who I am." "I know what you are not," he replied. She blinked. "You are not weak," he continued quietly. "And you are not invisible." The words struck something deep and aching inside her. She looked away before he could see the effect they had. "If I stay here," she said softly, "things will only get worse." "They will get worse whether you stay or not," he replied. "The difference is this." He stepped back, restoring distance. "Here they will not touch you." Silence settled again, thick and charged. She swallowed. "And what do you want in return?" At last, something like surprise flickered across his face. "I want nothing," he said. "Not from you." The honesty of it was almost frightening. He turned toward the door, then paused. "Rest," he said again, the word carrying more weight this time. "You are not to leave these chambers. Food will be brought. If you need anything, you will ask." "And if I refuse?" she asked, her voice barely steady. His hand rested on the door. "Then I will still protect you." He left without another word. She sat there long after the door closed, her heart pounding, her thoughts in turmoil. He had not apologized. He had not explained himself. He had not claimed her. Yet somehow, he had drawn a line the world would not dare cross. And for the first time, she wondered what it would cost him to keep it there. Time moved differently within the palace walls. Days did not announce themselves with shouted orders or clashing tempers. They arrived softly, carried on filtered light and quiet footsteps. She learned the rhythm of the chambers not by command, but by listening. The gentle knock before meals, the subtle shift of guards outside her door, the hush that followed whenever the Alpha King passed through the corridor. She was not questioned. No accusations. No interrogation. No demand that she justify her presence. At first, the absence felt like another test, one she did not know how to pass. She waited for the moment someone would finally ask her to explain herself, to defend her worth. Beg never came. Instead, there were silences. And within those silences, memories began to surface. She sat by the window one morning, knees drawn to her chest, watching the fog drift between the distant towers. A cup of untouched tea cooled beside her. The quiet pressed in, not cruelly, but insistently, leaving her with nothing to distract her from herself. She thought of her childhood. Not in sweeping images but fragments. A mat too thin for winter nights. Meals eaten last, after everyone else had finished. A voice telling her to move, to make room, to be useful if she wished to stay. She had learned early how to take up less space. Her wolf had learned it too. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. He entered without ceremony, as he always did. The Alpha King did not bring guards into her chambers. He did not linger near the door as if expecting her to flee. He simply came in, as though her presence here required no explanation. She straightened instinctively, setting the tea aside. "You don't have to stand," he said. She froze halfway, then slowly sat back down. He took the chair across from her, not imposing, not distant. Between them sat the space of a conversation neither of them rushed to begin. "How are you feeling?" he asked. The question startled her. It was not how people usually spoke to her. Not unless they wanted something. "I'm fine," she answered, the old habit sliding into place. He studied her quietly, his gaze sharp but not unkind. "That was not the question," he said. She hesitated, fingers tightening in the fabric of her sleeve. "I don't know how to answer it." "That," he said calmly, "is an answer." Silence settled again. This one felt different, expectant rather than empty. "I heard them talking," she said suddenly, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "The servants, the guards, they know who I am." "Yes. They know what my pack thinks of me." "Yes." Her throat tightened. "And you still let me stay." "I did." "Why?" He did not answer right away. "Tell me about them," he said instead. "Your pack." Her chest ached at the redirection. She almost refused. Almost retreated behind practiced politeness. But something in his stillness held her in place. "They forgot me," she said quietly. "Not all at once. Slowly." He listened without interruption. "I was never beaten," she continued, as if compelled to be precise. "That would have required noticing me. I was just overlooked, passed over, given what was left." She glanced up, meeting his gaze for a brief second before looking away again. "When my wolf didn't surface the way it should have, they stopped expecting anything from me. I stopped expecting it too." He said nothing. Encouraged by the absence of judgment, the words kept coming. "They didn't think I would ever be chosen. Not truly. I was there to fill space. To make numbers even during ceremonies. A reminder of what not to be." Her voice wavered, and she forced it steady. "I didn't come to the mating ceremony hoping for anything. I just didn't want to be punished for not showing up." He shifted slightly, his attention never leaving her. "You collapsed," he said softly. "Why?" The memory tightened her chest. "There was too much magic," she admitted. "Too much expectation in the air. It felt like standing beneath a wave that was never meant to break for me." My wolf panicked. "Your wolf is still there," he said. She shook her head faintly. "She's small, quiet. So are storms before they rise." The words caught her off guard. She looked at him again, startled. "You don't speak of her like she's broken," she said. He met her gaze steadily. She is not. Something inside her shifted, slow, careful, like ice beginning to crack. I never expected a mate, she confessed. Or kindness. I didn't even know I wanted it until. She stopped herself, unsure how to finish the thought. Until you were given it, he said, not unkindly. Her breath hitched. He stood then, moving toward the window, his back to her. You were never meant to disappear, he said quietly. You were allowed to. The distinction hurt more than accusation ever could. She hugged her arms around herself, blinking back the sudden burn behind her eyes. No one had ever put it into words before. When he turned back to her, his expression was unchanged, but something unspoken passed between them. You will remain here, he said. As long as you need. And after that? She asked. That will be your choice. The word echoed in her mind long after he left. She returned to the window, watching the fog lift slowly from the palace grounds. For the first time, the silence around her did not feel like absence. Felt like space. And in that space, something fragile and untested began to take shape. Not hope yet, but the quiet possibility of being seen. The palace began to learn her name. Not loudly. Not all at once. It moved through the halls in careful murmurs, carried by servants who bowed a little too deeply and guards who straightened when she passed. No one asked her to prove her right to be there. No one challenged her presence outright. They only watched. She felt it when she walked the corridors under escort, the weight of unseen eyes following her steps. Some curious, some resentful, some calculating. Rumors bloomed in the spaces where truth was withheld, twisting her existence into something dangerous. She did not hear most of them, but she felt their pressure all the same. The Alpha King did not keep her hidden, nor did he display her. She was given freedom within boundaries. Gardens at dawn, libraries at dusk, the quiet inner courtyards where water traced slow patterns over stone. Always guarded. Always untouched. Protection without possession. It was a strange thing to live inside. One afternoon, as she wandered the palace gardens, she paused beside a shallow reflecting pool. Pale petals drifted across the surface, their reflections shattering with each ripple. She crouched, trailing her fingers through the water. For once, no one spoke to her. The quiet felt earned. You favor the quieter paths, his voice said behind her. She did not startle this time. I don't like being seen, she admitted, rising slowly to face him. Yet you are, he replied. He stood a respectful distance away, hands clasped behind his back. The wind stirred his cloak, carrying that familiar scent. Pine, smoke, authority restrained by will alone. They talk about me, she said. Yes. They think I am here because of you. You are, he said calmly. Her breath caught. Then why don't you claim me? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Silence fell between them, heavy and deliberate. His gaze sharpened, not with anger but something far more dangerous. Because claiming you would not protect you, he said at last. It would make you a target. I already am one. Not like that. He stepped closer then, not enough to touch, but enough that the space between them felt charged. A claim would bind you to me in ways the court would tear apart. They would look for weakness. For leverage. For fault, she whispered. Yes. She swallowed. And you don't see me as one. No. The certainty in his voice unsettled her more than doubt ever could. They walked then, side by side along the garden path. The gravel crunched softly beneath their steps. I heard the council argued, she said quietly. About me. They always argue. About my worth. He stopped walking. He turned surprised. They do not get to decide that, he said. His voice was still calm, but something deeper moved beneath it. Nor do they get to question my judgment. What did you say to them, she asked. That you were under my protection. And they accepted that. They did not have a choice. Her pulse quickened. Because you're the Alpha King. Because I am responsible for what I protect. They resumed walking. Later that evening, she heard raised voices through the thick doors of her chambers. Not shouting but heated, controlled, dangerous. She recognized one voice. "She has no standing," a man snapped. "No lineage worth noting. You cannot shelter her indefinitely." "The shelter is not indefinite," the Alpha King replied. "And yet you refuse to explain yourself." Silence followed. Then his voice again, colder now. "I owe no explanation for preventing cruelty." The words sank into her chest like a promise. The voices faded. Footsteps retreated. That night, she stood at the window long after the moon rose, watching the torches burn along the palace walls. She felt something unfamiliar settling into her bones, a sense of safety not built on obedience or invisibility, but presence. He had not claimed her. He had not touched her. Yet he had drawn a boundary around her that the world dared not cross. And as she lay down to sleep, she wondered how long such restraint could last, and what would happen when it finally broke. The truth reached her the way poison often did. Quietly, accidentally, too late to be taken back. She had gone to the Eastern Gallery just after dawn, drawn by the hush that lived there. The corridor overlooked the inner court, its tall arches wrapped in ivy and pale stone. It was a place where voices carried, where words spoken in confidence sometimes forgot to stay contained. She did not intend to listen. She simply stopped when she heard his name. "Should never have been there," an elder said, his voice tight with disapproval. "You know that." "I know the law," the Alpha King replied. Her breath caught. She stepped back into the shadow of a pillar, heart thudding. "The law exists for a reason," the elder continued. "An unannounced presence at a mating ceremony, an interruption of fate itself, it borders on violation." "He did not violate anything," another voice cut in. "A woman this time." Precise. The girl collapsed. "He acted." "He acted without sanction," the elder snapped. "And now the court whispers that the Alpha King interferes with bonds that are not his to touch." Silence followed. Then his voice, lower than before. "I would do it again." Her fingers curled against the cold stone. "You cannot," the elder said. "Next time, the council will not be so forgiving. The old laws are clear. If you intervene in a ceremony not meant for you, if you disrupt fate without declaring claim, you bind yourself to consequence." Claim. The word echoed in her mind. "What consequence?" the woman asked. "Was longer this time." "Loss of authority," the elder said. "At best. At worst, war." The world tilted. "He cannot claim her," the elder continued relentlessly. "Not without igniting every rival pack watching for weakness. She has no rank, no protection of her own. She would be torn apart by politics before the bond even settled." "Then she must be removed," the woman said coldly. "For his sake." "For hers," the elder corrected. "If she remains, she becomes a liability. To him. To the throne." A liability. Her chest tightened painfully. The words pressed into old wounds, fitting too easily where they had been spoken before. "You should have let her fall," the elder finished. Something dangerous moved in the Alpha King's silence. "I will decide what I let fall," he said at last. "And what I carry." Footsteps shifted. The voices began to fade. She did not stay to hear the end. She turned and fled down the corridor, her steps soundless against the stone. Her heart pounding so loudly she feared it would give her away. The palace suddenly felt too vast, its walls closing in, every shadow a reminder of how fragile her safety truly was. She had never been meant to stay. Not here. Not anywhere power lived. By the time she reached her chambers, her hands were shaking. A liability. She pressed her palms against the door, breathing hard, forcing herself not to crumble. He had never lied to her, but he had not told her everything. The protection, the restraint, distance. It wasn't hesitation. It was containment. He was holding the world back from her. And holding himself back too. That night, when he came to see her, She almost pretended to sleep, almost spared herself the look in his eyes. But when he entered, the air shifted in that familiar way, and she knew there was no hiding from him, not truly. "You're restless," he said quietly. She sat up, drawing the blanket closer around her shoulders. "How long was I meant to stay ignorant?" His jaw tightened. "You were not meant to overhear the counsel." "So it's true," she said. "I'm a problem." "You are not." "I am," she interrupted softly. "You said it yourself. The consequences. The laws. I don't belong in your world." He took a step toward her, then stopped, as if crossing that distance would break something delicate. "You belong where you are safe," he said. "And here you are." "For now," she replied. Silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. "They'll keep pushing," she continued. "They'll use me against you. I won't be the reason you lose everything." His eyes darkened. "You are not a reason. You are a person." She gave a sad, small smile. "In your world, those aren't always different." She stood then, the decision settling into her bones with a familiar ache. This was something she understood. Leaving before she could be discarded. Choosing disappearance over punishment. "I need to go," she said. "No," he said immediately. "Yes," she replied, steady despite the tremor in her chest. "Before they make you choose." He stared at her, something fierce and restrained warring behind his eyes. "If you leave," he said slowly, "they will not be kind." "They never are," she whispered. "But at least this time I'll know why." She moved past him, and for the first time since he had caught her, he did not stop her. Not because he did not want to, but because some cages, even golden ones, were still cages. As the door closed behind her, the bond between them, unnamed, unclaimed, unfinished, stretched thin with distance. And somewhere deep within the palace, the Alpha King felt the first true fracture in the restraint that had kept the world standing. The pack did not welcome her return. They sensed it before she crossed the boundary stones, wolves stirring beneath skin, unease rippling through the air like a warning. The land itself felt colder here, stripped of the quiet protection she had lived under for days. No guards walked beside her now. No silent power cleared the path ahead. Only memory. Only consequence. She stepped into the clearing just as dusk bled into night, the sky bruised with purple and ash. Heads turned. Conversations died. It sharpened. "She's back." The words were not spoken kindly. She stood straight, though her legs trembled, her hands curled tight at her sides. She had left with nothing but the clothes she wore and the weight of what she had overheard. Now that weight pressed down on her chest, heavy and suffocating. The alpha of her pack emerged from the longhouse, his expression carved from stone. "So," he said, voice carrying easily, "the palace tires of its charity." Murmurs followed. "Are hungry. She thinks she's important now. She thinks she belongs among kings." Did she warm his bed? Her breath caught, but she did not speak. She had learned long ago that defending herself only fed the cruelty. "You embarrassed us," the alpha continued, stepping closer. "In front of every rival pack. You let them believe we raised something ambitious." "I didn't ask for any of it," she said quietly. Laughter rippled through the crowd. "No one ever does," a woman sneered. "That's what makes it convincing." They circled her slowly, wolves peering out through human eyes. The pressure was immediate, familiar. Magic pushing, testing, reminding her of her place. "You brought attention where there should have been none," the alpha said. "Do you know what that costs us?" She nodded once. "Yes." "Good," he replied. "Then you'll accept the punishment." Her stomach dropped. She was forced to kneel in the center of the clearing, the stone biting into her knees. Accusations rained down. Seduction, manipulation, treachery. Each word struck harder than the last, not because they were true, but because they had always been waiting to be spoken. She tempted him. She used weakness to rise. She endangered us all. No one spoke in her defense. Not one. She searched the faces she had grown up around, hoping, foolishly, for hesitation, for discomfort, for doubt. She found none. The punishment was not bloody, not dramatic. It was worse. They stripped her of status she had barely possessed to begin with, took what little protection she had, assigned her tasks meant to remind her of her insignificance. "You will remain," the Alpha said coldly. "You will work. You will obey. And you will not speak of the palace again." She bowed her head. "As you command." As she was led away, her gaze lifted once, toward the distant horizon, where she imagined the palace towers catching the last light of day. He did not come. Night fell fully, wrapping the pack lands in darkness. She lay on her thin mat, staring at the low ceiling, her body aching, her hopes splintered into quiet pieces. She had told herself she expected this, but knowing did not make it hurt less. Somewhere far away, a king sat on a throne of restraint and silence. And she wondered, not for the first time but for the last, whether leaving him had been courage, or the cruelest mistake of her life. The moon rose blood-red over the pack lands, spilling light across the stone amphitheater that had been abandoned for generations except on nights of judgment. The air was heavy with anticipation, the scent of smoke, iron, and fear mixing into a tension she could taste on her tongue. She had been brought forward at dawn, but the trial would not begin until the full moon reached its peak, bathing the gathering in crimson light. Her hands were bound loosely, more symbolic than physical, as she knelt on the cold stone in the center of the amphitheater. Around her, dozens of wolves, human and shifter alike, formed a tight circle. Their eyes gleamed in the moonlight, reflecting accusation, expectation, and a hunger for spectacle. Her throat ached before she could speak. She did not raise her head. There was no comfort to be found in looking at the faces of her pack, the ones who had ignored her, dismissed her, and finally brought her back only to punish her. The Council of Alphas arrived last, stepping from the shadows in ceremonial robes adorned with silver and bone. Their arrival silenced the murmurs immediately. Every whisper, every breath seemed to freeze in place. The Alpha of her pack, the one who had condemned her so harshly days before, stood among them, his face taut with authority. A voice rang out from the center of the circle, stern, measured, unwavering. "You are accused," it said, "of disrupting sacred bonds, inviting danger upon the pack, and spreading scandal among our allies. What say you in your defense?" She swallowed hard. I did not intend to." The words faltered. She realized, painfully, that intention mattered nothing here. She had been returned not as a guest or a ward, but as a liability, a problem to be judged publicly. She had already failed. A laugh rang from the shadows, low, venomous. A pack elder, delighted in the spectacle, spoke next. "Intention. Child, the world does not reward intention. Only results. You are an embarrassment." Her shoulders tensed, yet she did not flinch. The blood moon painted her pale face crimson. She met the gaze of the Alpha of her pack, noting the satisfaction behind his eyes. Her chest tightened. And then she felt it. A subtle shift in the air, almost imperceptible at first. The hairs along her neck rose. Quiet pressure like the calm before a storm. It threaded through the crowd, settling over the circle, invisible but undeniable. Whispers began again. Quieter this time. Confused. Uneasy. And then, from the edge of the amphitheater, a figure emerged. Tall, broad, unhurried. Shadow fell over him even in the blood moonlight. Where he walked, the whispers faltered. Where he paused, silence followed. The Alpha King. Her heart lurched in a mixture of relief and fear. He stopped a few paces from the circle, gazing down at her with an unreadable expression. He said nothing at first. The entire assembly waited. Even the Alpha of her pack faltered, lips pressed tight, eyes narrowing in suspicion and caution. Finally, the king's voice cut through the night. Smooth, controlled, absolute. "She did not disrupt fate," he said. "She did not invite danger. She collapsed because she was overwhelmed. And she was rescued by my command." Gasps spread through the amphitheater. Faces turned pale in realization. Murmurs erupted, then died under the weight of his presence. "You would have executed judgment without understanding the truth," he continued. "Without knowing who protected her, without knowing why she was returned to you." The Council of Alphas stiffened. They were not used to being challenged in such a way, especially not under the light of the blood moon. "She is under my protection," he said, and now the words struck not just the pack, but every soul present. "Anyone who lays a hand upon her without my express command will answer to me directly. This trial ends." He stepped closer to her, though still keeping distance enough to honor the fragility of their situation. Every whisper fell silent. "You are not a liability," he said, eyes locking onto hers. "You are recognized. And those who failed to see your worth will learn the cost of underestimating me. And her." The alpha of her pack bowed stiffly, submission forced by circumstance rather than loyalty. Every other face in the amphitheater turned toward her, awe, fear, and disbelief mixing in equal measure. Her knees ached from kneeling, but she did not rise. Not yet. She felt the weight of the king's protection around her, a shield forged from power and restraint. For the first time since the ceremony she felt safe. Not hidden, not ignored, not invisible, but seen. The blood moon hung overhead, casting its eerie glow, as the Alpha King's words carved a line through the night. "You will speak only when you are ready," he said softly, his voice carrying directly to her, almost intimate despite the distance. "For now, know that you are mine to protect, not because of pity but because of recognition." Recognition. The word resonated inside her chest. Something quiet, fragile, and new began to bloom there, a spark she had never allowed herself to feel before. The assembly did not move. They did not speak. The night held its breath as the Alpha King remained, a sentinel in shadow, while she knelt under the crimson light of the blood moon, finally untouchable, finally acknowledged. And in that moment, the precarious hope she had carried, so fragile, so uncertain, began to take root, trembling but alive. Her public humiliation had been overturned. Her danger acknowledged. The next steps, acceptance, claim, the slow-burning bond, were still uncertain. But for the first time, she knew she would not face the world alone. The trial ended not with punishment, but with justice, wrought in silence and authority that no pack dared challenge. And somewhere deep inside her, she felt the first pulse of courage returning. The amphitheater was silent now, save for the soft rustle of fabric and the distant whisper of wind across stone. The blood moon had begun to fade, leaving the night bruised and dim, yet the tension in the air remained, thick as smoke. Every pack member present, alphas, elders and warriors alike, held their breath, waiting for the next word. She stood at the center of the circle, her knees still stiff from hours of forced submission. Her hands trembled faintly, though not from fear. From the weight of what was about to unfold. Every eye in the gathering bore down on her, some with awe, others with resentment, most with a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. Then he stepped forward. The Alpha King moved with the calm inevitability of a storm approaching. His dark cloak swept across the stone, his boots silent but certain. Where he walked, shadows seemed to bend, whispers died, and every pair of eyes followed him, not out of fear alone but out of recognition. He stopped just beyond the circle, towering, yet his posture was restrained, deliberate. He did not reach for her. He did not touch her. But his presence alone drew the space around her taut, as though reality itself acknowledged him. He surveyed the crowd with a gaze that cut deeper than any blade. "Enough," he said. His voice, smooth and commanding, rolled over the amphitheater. Every ear turned, every whisper died. "This farce ends." Murmurs rose, hesitant, but he did not allow them to grow. "She is no liar. She is no seductress. She is no pawn to be used against me or this pack." She collapsed during the ceremony. Yes, but not for manipulation, not for betrayal, not for gain. She was overwhelmed by what was never meant to touch her. The alpha of her former pack paled. His fists clenched, but the king's gaze met his without hesitation, unwavering. And yet you would have judged her, punished her, exposed her to humiliation for a circumstance beyond her control. His tone was quiet, but every word carried authority, resonating across the stone amphitheater like an immovable decree. Silence followed. The crowd dared not breathe. "She is mine to protect," he continued. The words were deliberate, measured, leaving no room for interpretation. "Not out of pity, not because it is convenient, because I recognize her, her courage, her worth, her strength." Whispers flared, then fell away under the weight of his presence. Some alphas shifted uneasily. The elders exchanged glances. None dared challenge him. "I claim her," he said finally, his voice low but carrying, "as my responsibility, my ward and my charge. Anyone who lays a hand upon her, anyone who dares to question her place, answers to me directly." The words cut through the night. Hearts stilled. Wolves faltered in their stance. Those who had sought to humiliate her now bowed their heads, not out of respect for her, but out of fear of the one who had claimed her. She looked at him then, standing tall in the fading blood moonlight, and for the first time in her life, she felt the world shift beneath her. Not because she had gained power, but because the one who had it all had chosen to place her at the center. "You will not be questioned again," he said, his eyes softening for the briefest moment as they met hers. "Not here. Not elsewhere. Not until you are ready to speak for yourself." She swallowed, her voice barely a whisper. "Why me?" He stepped closer but still kept distance. The tension between them was palpable, electric. "Because you are not invisible. 'Cause you are not weak. 'Cause no one else saw what I saw." The reality of his words sank into her chest like sunlight into frozen soil. For the first time she understood. She was no longer expendable, no longer overlooked. She was recognized, chosen, not forced, not claimed out of convenience, but claimed because she mattered. The Alpha King's gaze swept across the amphitheater once more. "Let this be known," he said. "All who sought to diminish her. Your judgments are void. She is under my protection. She is mine." Every whisper died. Every eye turned, some in awe, others in disbelief. The once resentful alphas, those who had scoffed at her existence, bowed in submission. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. She stood straighter, chest swelling with a mixture of fear, awe, and dare she name it, hope. For the first time she was not merely surviving. She was seen. She was protected. She was recognized. And as the king turned to walk away, signaling the end of the trial, she realized that the world she had once believed cruel and indifferent had shifted. The power to harm her had been stripped from everyone else. And in its place, the Alpha King's claim had set her free. The amphitheater remained silent long after he departed, but she felt it in every breath she took. The weight of authority, the weight of protection, and the fragile, unspoken bond now stretched taut between them. For the first time she did not feel invisible. She felt unstoppable. The morning sun rose slowly over the palace, gilding the towers with soft gold and casting long shadows across the courtyard. For the first time since the ceremony that had changed her life, she stepped outside unguarded, though not unprotected. The Alpha King walked beside her, silent and steady, as though the world itself would hesitate before challenging them. They approached the grand hall where nobles, warriors, and elders had gathered, those who had witnessed the trial under the blood moon, those who had doubted her, judged her, whispered behind her back. Today, all eyes were on her again, but this time it was different. She no longer knelt. She no longer lowered her gaze. She stood tall, every step measured, every heartbeat steady, though her pulse thrummed with anticipation. The Alpha King paused at the head of the hall, allowing her to enter first. She felt the collective gaze of the kingdom upon her, a weight she had never known, and yet, for the first time, it did not crush her. "You may speak," he said quietly, just enough for her to hear. His presence remained beside her, a silent shield against every doubt, every accusation, every lingering fear. She drew a deep breath, letting it steady her. Every past humiliation, every rejection, every moment of invisibility, they all fell away beneath the light of this morning. She was no longer the girl who had fainted, the one forgotten by her pack. She was recognized, chosen, protected. The hall remained hushed, waiting, watching as she took her first step forward. "Today," she began, her voice steady despite the tremor of emotion beneath it, "I stand not because of fear, nor because I am bound. I stand because I am given a choice. And today I choose my own path." A stir ran through the hall. Some noble women gasped. A few elders stiffened. The Alpha King did not move, but his eyes met hers, calm, unreadable, yet impossibly warm. Her gaze lifted, and she spoke his name aloud for the first time. "I choose you." The words were not a surrender. They were not an obligation. They were a recognition, an acceptance, a reclaiming of power she had never been allowed to wield. He stepped closer then, the motion slow, deliberate, as though even the smallest movement carried weight. His eyes held hers, unwavering, and for a moment, the world outside the hall ceased to exist. "You do not choose me out of pity," he said softly. "You choose because you see what you are, and what we are together." "Yes," she whispered. "Because I choose us." The hall erupted in a controlled, respectful silence, not because they celebrated, but because they recognized the authority behind it. The Alpha King's claim had become mutual. It was no longer a shield without name. It was a bond, acknowledged by both parties, unbroken by fear or doubt. He extended his hand toward her. She hesitated only briefly, then placed hers within it. The contact was electric, not raw passion but quiet power, a promise sealed in restraint and recognition. "From this day forward," he said, his voice echoing over the assembled crowd, "she stands with me. Not behind me, not beneath me, but beside me. As my equal in will, in courage, in choice." Every whisper of doubt died. Every lingering suspicion fell silent. She felt the weight of the world lift slightly, the chains of her past loosening as she accepted her place beside him, not because it was offered, but because she claimed it herself. The Alpha King did not kneel. He did not bow. He simply held her hand, his presence steady, unyielding, and protective. She squeezed his hand in return, and in that simple gesture, every fear, every humiliation, every moment she had ever endured was met with acknowledgement, and replaced with power, choice, and belonging. For the first time in her life she was free. Not by escaping danger, not by hiding in shadows, but by stepping into the light beside the one who had recognized her worth before the world ever could. And as the assembled crowd looked on, she felt something she had never felt before. Strength, recognition, and love. Not forced, not demanded, but chosen. And that choice was hers. The morning sun poured over the palace courtyard like liquid gold, illuminating the banners that fluttered in the crisp wind. Today was no ordinary morning. The air hummed with anticipation, but it was not fear or doubt that filled the space. It was reverence, respect, witness. She stood at the center of the courtyard, her posture straight, shoulders back and chin raised. Gone was the trembling, unsure girl who had once fainted at a ceremony she never asked to attend. Gone were the doubts, the whispers, and the weight of invisibility that had followed her like a shadow. Today, she was fully herself, seen, recognized, and standing beside the one who had chosen her before the world could deny her. The Alpha King stepped forward, his presence unwavering, a living pillar of authority and protection. His eyes met hers, steady and calm, and she felt the quiet reassurance that had guided her through the darkness of doubt and the harsh judgment of the pack. The nobles, warriors, and elders who had once sneered, whispered, and judged now stood still, watching. Some had bent on one knee in acknowledgement of the bond. Others simply watched, realizing that the story of the girl who had fainted had been rewritten. Here in the light of day, in front of all who had doubted her. Today, the king's voice rang out, clear and commanding. We witness not only a union but a transformation. She is no longer the girl who stumbled. She is no longer unseen, forgotten, or underestimated. Her gaze swept across the crowd. She recognized faces that had once dismissed her, and in their expressions she saw acknowledgement, not forced, not insincere, but real. They had witnessed the shift of power, the reclamation of agency, and the undeniable truth of her worth. She took a deep breath and felt the silk of her gown sway softly with the morning breeze. The fabric, the color, the weight, everything spoke of her rise, not because of him but because of her. Every step she had taken, every choice she had made, had led her here. The Alpha King extended his hand. She placed hers within it without hesitation. Their fingers intertwined, and in that simple gesture, a bond was confirmed. Public, undeniable, unbroken. She felt his strength and restraint, his unwavering protection, and the quiet promise that he would remain beside her. Not above her, not behind her, but equal in recognition and choice. From this day forward, he continued, his voice carrying to the furthest corners of the courtyard, she stands not only as my mate but as a woman of power, courage, and will. Let this day mark the beginning of a life reclaimed, a bond chosen freely, and a kingdom that bears witness to what it truly means to be seen and protected. A hush followed his proclamation, filled with awe and reverence. She looked up at him, heart swelling with something she had never allowed herself to feel so openly before. Complete, unshakable belonging. For a moment the past, the humiliations, the fainting, the whispered judgments, hovered like a shadow, but it had no power here. It was acknowledged, yes, but it was gone. Transformed. She was no longer the girl who had faltered under the gaze of others. She was whole. She was seen. She was chosen. The crowd began to stir, murmurs of approval and respect spreading through the courtyard, not as judgment but as acknowledgement. She smiled quietly, a soft curve of lips that carried the weight of everything she had endured and overcome. Beside her, the Alpha King's presence was steady, unyielding, protective, and yet tender in the way only he could be. She squeezed his hand lightly, and he gave the slightest nod, a silent affirmation of partnership, of equality, and of what they had achieved together. She closed her eyes briefly, feeling the warmth of the sun, the quiet strength of the man beside her, and the recognition of a kingdom that had once forgotten her but would never do so again. When she opened her eyes, she saw herself reflected in the gazes of those around her, not as the girl who had fainted, not as the one dismissed or overlooked, but as a woman of courage, of will, of choice. And in that reflection, she finally understood what it meant to belong. The girl who had collapsed, invisible and rejected, was gone. In her place stood someone unshakable, recognized, and deeply, irrevocably chosen. The sun rose higher, flooding the courtyard in light, and she stepped forward beside the Alpha King, ready to face the world as she was meant to. Seen, strong, and never again forgotten. The story had ended. But her life, her true life, had only just begun.